Ain't you that old loser? Where'd you come from, you bird-faced mug? Who cares anyway? I'll gobble you up first.
The debut console release from developer Game Science impresses with both its visuals and mechanics, providing you've got the patience to improve. If the devil truly is in the detail, then we can go ahead and give Game Science all the appropriate plaudits now. Because as well as being one of the most beautiful action games I've ever played, Blackmyth Wukong is also no slouch when it comes to the freedom and experimentation its combat allows for, especially compared to the raft of other action RPGs that skew closely to the Soulslike formula that have recently released. It also does excellent justice by its source material, the classic Chinese novel Journey to the West, using this as a base in which to craft some seriously memorable boss fights and an epic adventure that's just as intriguing as it is obscure. Set some time after the classic Chinese novel in which it's based, Blackmyth Wukong casts you as the staff-wielding monkey warrior, referred to only as the Destined One. It's heavily implied following the game's epic prologue that they might be a descendant of the legendary Monkey King Sun Wukong. Finding that out for sure, however, means gathering a series of specific sage relics littered throughout the land's handful of varied biomes. To say more about Blackmyth Wukong's narrative would be bordering on spoilers, since its presence is kept to the background for the most part, but just know that there's a cool meaning behind all your actions, and the game's bombastic opening consists of a grand set-piece battle that worked to get me pumped for the ensuing journey to begin. Getting into the game proper, and Blackmyth Wukong doesn't disappoint either in its diversity of locations or in-depth nature of its combat systems. The Destined One's nature to have a staff be their main weapon means taking fights to both enemy underlings and giant-sized bosses always feels slick and flawless, with combo chains consisting of light, heavy, and magic attacks feeling incredibly satisfying to land if pulled off correctly. There's a sprightly nature to the way the Destined One handles that gives Blackmyth Wukong a much faster and slicker sense of pace when compared to your more typical Souls-like fare, and it's a combat system I was pleased to see open up rather quickly. You see, in addition to basic melee staff hits, a series of castable spells help you get the drop on foes whenever they've either got you backed into a corner or are proving especially tough. The first one you gain is the immensely useful Immobilize, which, as its name suggests, temporarily freezes your opponent in place to let you get in a fair amount of hits before they're able to animate again. Immobilize's function might seem relatively straightforward, but it was never once left out of my magic spell loadout for the entire time of my playthrough. It even works on bosses, so came in especially handy both when trying to deploy hits fast, as well as when needing some breathing room to down a health restoring gourd flask. Other notable spells I became accustomed to using was the clone summoning A Pluck of Many, which uses up a lot of mana before it's upgraded, but was always worth it for the ways it would take the heat off me. Then there's the stealth fueled cloud step spell, turning the Destined One temporarily invisible so as to leave your opponent confused before unleashing a sneak attack. Not all of Blackmyth Wukong's spells are winners, mind you, but each serve the purpose of allowing players to customize their abilities depending on their chosen playstyle. In the absence of different weapon types, your staff can be improved, but no swords, axes, or otherwise are ever introduced. Spells are a great workaround from developer Game Science that encourages experimentation and allow for a good degree of combat flexibility. Spells combine with your ability to upgrade the Destined One's gear when visiting health and mana restoring shrines, the ability to summon an enemy's spirit, and immensely powerful transformations to help each one-on-one encounter never quite feel the same. Initially, the number of combat mechanics Blackmyth Wukong has in place might seem overwhelming, but it's good to have options whenever a fight proves particularly bruising. My one disappointment with combat comes down to the stance system, which doesn't so much represent three distinct fighting styles for the Destined One to deploy, but rather dictates the type of heavy attack they finish with. Pillar stance might be great for avoiding ground-based attacks by placing you out of reach, for example, yet very rarely did I find myself using it, or indeed the thrust stance, compared to the far more well-rounded smash stance, the latter clearly being suited for most, if not all, fight scenarios. Speaking of which, the bosses very much serve as the stars of the show in Blackmyth Wukong, pulling from the vast catalogue of creatures featured in ancient Chinese mythology to have the Destined One face everything from flying ice dragons, giant electrified toads, and part man, part fish lake warriors. barriers. Each one nearly always appears to be more inventive than the last after making themselves known, a fact that always left me excited about the kind of creature I might get to fight next, and my pulse racing about what I'd just gone through before seeing that coveted defeated on-screen message. They come thick and fast in each biome compared to many other action RPGs of this ilk, to the extent that I found myself often fighting one large-scale boss not even 10 minutes following the previous one. Sometimes it can feel relentless, especially when the previous boss took me dozens of attempts. I'm looking at you, Tiger Vanguard, before succeeding. But it's a good problem to have overall. Sadly, what goes on in between these fights isn't always the most exciting by comparison, because while each of Blackmyth Wukong's locations look astounding regardless of the specific element or biome they're based on, their relatively open nature can feel a tad meandering, and at various times did I fight through a horde of underlings just to be greeted by a dead end. Worse still, one particular prison area found in the 3rd chapter saw me die countless times through no fault of my own due to falling from a great height. Were a shrine not located nearby, losing this progress would have felt far more frustrating. More positive is how all the chapters are absolutely stacked with hidden secrets, rewards and collectibles to find, and at least one of those led me to enjoy what I deem to be one of chapter 1's best boss fights. Just bear in mind that you're unable to trek back to one biome after moving to another, so it pays to always keep your eyes open. There's been various talk in the lead up to Blackmyth Wukong's launch as to whether what Game Science has made constitutes as a Soulslike. The genre being so far-reaching and amorphous by this point means everyone has a different definition, but I definitely think it's worth mentioning that, for me at least, Blackmyth Wukong most definitely adheres to more Souls-like ideals and philosophies than it doesn't. Because sure, while your will isn't lost upon death, and the emphasis here is not on parrying, it is still by and large an incredibly punishing action RPG where shrines act as health restoration points, combat is centered around precise strikes that require stamina management, and running back to bosses can be required. Bar a few small niggles with location layouts and my disappointment with the stance system, Blackmyth Wukong is an exceptionally well-playing and slick Souls-like adventure stacked to the rafters with memorable boss fights, an in-depth upgrade system, and some seriously good-looking environments. The fluidity of its staff-based combat combines with the litany of spells, spirits, and creature transformations to render it a truly unique entry in the genre, offering more than enough challenge for From Software veterans, while still offering just about enough leeway for newcomers to be able to enjoy this epically grand mythological story. We give Blackmyth Wukong a 4 out of 5. What do you think, and are you still excited? Do you plan on picking this one up? Be sure to let me know in the comment section below, and consider subscribing to the Mirror Gaming YouTube channel to stay up to date with even more videos like this. Until next time, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.